We're going to open the Architectural Board of Review agenda for October 2nd and start with our roll call, please.
Thank you. I'll proceed with roll call. Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Six.
Here.
Board Member Anderson.
Here.
Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Noon.
Here.
Board Member Safran.
Here.
Board Member Whalen.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, we can move on to general public comment. Do we have anyone that would like to speak today?
All right. Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, but if you do wish to speak on an item that's not agendized, I don't see anyone moving, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see anyone raising their hand, but we did receive 2 letters from Linda LeCam and Dan and Krista Rhodes. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, we'll close public comment and go to approval of the minutes for September 18th, please. Have those up. Is everyone satisfied with their comments as presented? Okay. Somebody like to make a motion to approve?
I would make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
I have a comment, please.
Okay.
Under my own, this is item number 1, 236 North Milpas. My comments are number 2. See if I can make my point here. I believe it says guidelines, there is no style on this block. This is towards the end, but across the Montecito Street, being more specific, the guidelines call for Hispanic / Pueblo are out of the guidelines, not Spanish colonial. So with those 2 comments,
Okay. Would you like to second the,
I thought I heard it. Sure, I'll second that
Okay.
with the amendment.
any other discussion? Okay, we can take our vote.
Okay. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
I will abstain, please.
Board Member Noon.
Yes.
Board Member Sofrin.
Yes.
Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And for October 2nd, please. Consent calendar.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Today we had one item on consent, 2840 De La Vina Street. This is a proposal for exterior facade improvements to the existing shopping center there. And the item was continued indefinitely with comments. The proposed parapet is not in keeping with the neighborhood. Revise the parapet to show more articulation and details. 2, show details of the perforated vertical panels. 3, show parapet section with detail of slopes and light fixtures. 4, provide plaster colors and make a final selection. 5, provide vertical widths of perforated panels in relation to the building. 6, provide additional information for site lighting. And lastly, 7, the color palette and material board are acceptable.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, that sounds like a very persnickety comment that I would make, so I would grant an approval or accept the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second. Can we just, on number 5, it was provide widths of the panel, not vertical widths.
Okay. It sounds like an interesting proposal.
Yes.
Yes, Chair Moore, I have a comment that may be in opposition to the others. I appreciate how the mid-century modernism is preserved on the interior of the site, and yet I wonder if there are plans for the adjacent block building. But moreover, the proposed facades don't reflect any materials or expressions of the historical styles, qualities, or characteristics of the historical buildings associated with Santa Barbara. And all but a few buildings in this neighborhood along these blocks of De La Vina do reflect that to some degree or another. And I would request, and part of the continuance be that it more closely reflect the characteristics known as Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Did it seem to the consent folks today that is something that should go to the full board, or is this something that could be handled?
We did discuss that, and we felt like what they proposed was a benefit to the community, and that we asked for additional detailing and articulation, and that we could look at it on consent.
Okay, great. All right. Well, then let's take our vote.
Right. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Safran,
Yes.
Board Member Whalen.
I'll vote no for my pre-stated position.
Right, motion passes.
Okay. I guess just for clarification, this is just a ratification of the minutes. So,
Right.
We can take the no, we'll take the no vote for now, still approved, but I would like to do some research as to
Yeah.
what that actually means. Because I think you're denying the ratification, but in this case, it's been approved, so.
Approving the minutes, right?
Okay.
okay, moving on to announcements, requests by applicants, appeals, et cetera. Anything from staff?
No announcements from staff.
Okay, any input from board members on future agenda items that they'd like to see? No? Okay, any subcommittee reports? No? Okay, then that concludes general business. And I believe we could get going with item 1. Okay, this is 501 Ninos Drive, and this is a proposal for renovation and alterations to Dwight Murphy Field, including conversion of existing grass soccer field to artificial turf, new fencing and lighting, replacement of existing buildings with restrooms at a new location, and accessible pathways. Additional new amenities include a fitness area, youth baseball field, picnic areas, and a universally accessible playground. The proposal will also involve the conversion of Park Road to primarily one-way circulation and angled parking and redesigned park entries. Final approval was requested and project was last reviewed on April 17th of 2023. If we could have our minutes up from the last round. Yeah,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I reviewed the video thoroughly of last time that I was absent, so I will be able to participate.
Great. We're just digging up the minutes from last time around. But I guess in the meantime, if you wanted to introduce yourselves, that'd be good.
Justin Van Mullen with Parks and Recreation.
Welcome.
Elijah Pierce with RRM Design Group.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Chair Moore, so these last minutes were the in-progress review that happened on April 17th. Just wanted to let that be known.
Okay. Okay, is everybody up to speed? Yeah. And does staff have anything they want to add at this time? No? Okay. All right. Take it
Mr.
away.
Chair, I'll just start off with a brief introduction. So this is Dwight Murphy Park. It hasn't had a significant renovation in over 60 years, so we have a real opportunity to maximize recreation and play value. This is our fifth ABR meeting, but our outreach has been extensive with over 15 meetings and workshops that we kicked off in 2018. we also have an incredible partner, the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation, some of who are in the audience today, and you'll hear it speak in public comment. The vision for the playground came from the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation. They approached the Parks and Recreation Department in 2016 to create a fully inclusive playground. They have co-funded construction drawings, raised $6 million to build the playground, and they are currently raising an additional $2.5 million for an endowment to fund programming and long-term maintenance. The project has also received a $1.5 million federal grant, and we are seeking a $10 million grant, which we have not heard of yet, but the results, but we are ready to build this vision, and we are seeking final approval. Thank you.
Excellent. Good afternoon. So today, we wanted to first start out, kind of get our bearings a little on the site. It's a very large project site, so just to orient everyone, and then dive in a little bit into what has changed since the last time you've seen the project, since PDA, and then go into some of the further refinements. So as we walk through this, it is a large site. I've got basically 2 pages of notes of different details that we might want to review. Please feel free to jump in if you want to see something in more detail. We just have acres of details, so if you see something, please let me know. So this is the site as exists today. I think most of you are probably familiar with it. It is in the corner of Port Lamar and Ninos Drive. And so we have the soccer field, the softball field, and then a corner parking lot. So this is the proposed plan. And so there are some similarities. We still have this corner parking lot, but will be closed off to vehicular traffic right here. We have a multi-use path that connects down to the park road. But then we have a multi-use athletic field in the center of the site, a baseball field over on the east side, and then the Gwendolyn's playground at the corner of Port Lamar. So this is the general layout of the area. And so I'd like to start with some of the changes since the project was originally approved. Most of these changes are fairly minor, and some were based off requests from this committee, but would like to walk through those. So this is the fitness area, which is on the north side towards the Park Road. And previously, this had all been a concrete area, but we since then have revised this to be a permeable rubber surface. So it's a poured-in-place rubber surface, as you might see at a playground. This is kind of a tannish brown color. I think it works quite well with the surrounding landscape and gives the fitness area a little bit of a softer feel. Okay. Moving over to our fencing plan. So we have a fence on the outside of the playground that we have increased in height a little. It was at 3.5 feet. It's gone up to 5. But we've also tried the best to make it disappear a little. It's now gone to Malaga green. So this is that fence that runs right around here. And I'll jump to the exhibit. So it's this one. And so it's maybe a little hard to see, but that's kind of the point. It's fairly transparent welded wire fence painted out, but with a decorative undulating top rail. All right. Going back to the park. So this is right on the west side of the baseball diamond. We have this kind of north to south axes, and these trees, under some direction feedback from Nathan Slack, they're going now to paper bark trees. So crest from parks. So this whole row continues. We still have decorative species here and on the top, but this row right here has changed. And this PDF is making the computer think real hard. There we go. So another area that really hadn't been developed, this right in the corner along that park road, we have basically incorporated that into this project now and added a variety of agave plants throughout here. So this is now irrigated and replanted. Just thought this was a nice opportunity to bring this area up a bit. Okay. And moving into the playground area.
Sorry, before you leave that.
Absolutely.
So that newly planted area or refurbished area, whatever you want to refer to it as, what is there now? And is this a completely new palette? Is it just an adjusted?
So there are some existing palms there, but it's generally mulched over. I don't think there's really much any purposeful planting there at the time.
So most of that area is currently asphalt because it's part of a road. And yeah, there's very little planting there, but there is some aloes and some agaves, and they tend to do really well.
Okay.
Yeah, so right about through here is where there's a road existing. So down here still exists, those gray ones.
Okay.
Right. So moving into the playground, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tree. So one of the comments that had come from Alta members when we had our concept review of the tree, really trying to work on the balance of greenery to the rest of the treehouse play structure. So we are working with Science Art Studio, which is a fabricator of play structures, and worked with them to try to really up the amount of greenery and kind of foliage here. So we bumped this up by about 15%. I think it is one thing to note where
Did you say 15%?
15%. So, so we were able to bring the greenery down some too, which we thought was helpful, kind of giving a little more natural look. One item that we just had to note is that we needed to keep any of the more finer features of the leaves away from any opening or door where anyone could ever potentially reach it. So we were able to pull it down here, but at the entry, we have to kind of keep it high and clear, so that none of these elements are meant or designed to be climbed on. So we wanted to keep those kind of out of reach. All right. Then we also had some comments about the cupola, which in a moment I will try to show you. So we had we had this cupola in the last round, but it was a little more, I'll say maybe refined. It had multiple window lights, mullions and muttons, and it wasn't as playful. So in this iteration, we have reduced some of the detail, tried to make it a little more consistent with the rest of the building. Also, we've added a little bit of randomness and fun to it that is akin to the other windows in the rest of the play structure. All right, so moving out, these aren't per se changes from last time, but did want to give a sense of further refinement. So we've now detailed out the different equipment in this area, so that's been dialed in. Number of callouts for the walls, etc. We have walls and fence plans. In general, I would say the walls typically are a stuccoed concrete assembly, fences, we have a variety, and I'll show you those in a moment. So if you see right here, let me zoom in, just keep up. We kind of have a key plan. So I'll be moving through these. So we'll move it to our zone 2 now. All right. So zone 2 is the parking lot. I'll say the more notable items in this area is that trellis. And again, this is a steel trellis with cedar slats. Let me pull up the shop drawings for those. So it's semicircular. It's also at an angle, kind of fanning towards that central element. Then we have, you can see kind of the steel substructure, and then the purlins up top are cedar.
What are their dimensions? The wood?
Good question. Those are, I believe it's 4 by 6. As soon as I can zoom in, I will tell you that for sure.
Okay.
4 by 6.
Good. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
And what is the span of that? Excuse me.
Let me zoom in for you. So, just shy of 25 feet in this direction, 18 between supports.
And the wood has a designated finish, I'm assuming, somewhere on the plans?
Yes. I can check it, but make sure that we have that, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. It's stain. All right. Moving over to zone 3. So this is towards the zoo. Just one little refinement here. In discussion with the Parks Department, we really wanted to make sure that at this crossing, there wouldn't be a temptation to cut right across through this area. It's both planted, but also serving a kind of bioswale functions. Not the ideal place to walk. And so we wanted to redirect people, but with a nice looking fence. So we added actually a woodcrete. It's like a wood split rail fence. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Yeah. So, yeah.
So if somebody does cross the street there, how far do they have to go, left or right, to enter the park?
All right. I'll show you 1 second. So this would probably be the main entrance here, or if they wanted to go into the playground right here. So it's that crosswalk.
Okay.
Okay. Moving over to Zone 5, which is largely the multi-use field. Not a lot to look at here, but I just did want to bring this up because it had been mentioned, I think, by a couple public commenters earlier. This is an artificial turf field, but we were able to specify natural cork infill for the filler. So if you have ever experienced the typical turf field, basically have black granular rubber bits. At this field, we won't have that black granular rubber. It will be a natural cork, which has a number of advantages. It's a little more padded, but it also keeps the heat down. It doesn't absorb as much solar radiation, so it's a little cooler. And just is a natural product. I wouldn't recommend eating it, but it's better than if your kid grabs some of the black rubber stuff. So lots of advantages. Really glad the Parks and Rec Department was able to get that locked down. Okay. And moving on to Zone 6. So here, this is the baseball field, and we've got some bleachers here and the restroom building, which we'll look at in a moment, and then a little hand washing station. So zooming into the restroom. So some slight refinements here, mostly in the details. I'll pull this up. So, we do have some crenellation up top. That was a question. Yeah. But I think there was just a question about the detailing on that in our previous round, so I wanted to pull some of those up. So it's a tile cap sloped to the interior with a drip. So really trying to avoid as much as possible any water coming down the exterior of that element. A few, trying to treat this building lightly, but a few nicer little touches. We have a wrought iron finial up top of the tower element. A few tile elements here with some light wrought iron. And then this is the cornice at the hip roof. So a cornice with a half-round gutter there. All right. Moving over that little hand washing station, opposite side. So as Mr. Van Mallen mentioned, this is an all-inclusive park, and we're really trying to think through as much as we can for families that are using this park. And one of the items is not putting, our restrooms will have labs in them, but if your kid is eating and gets gummy bears all over his hand, wanted somewhere where they didn't necessarily have to go out of sight to clean up. So we have a little exterior hand washing station. Basically a simple stucco surround with a prefab countertop and sinks inside there. Okay.
We're getting low on time here.
Yeah, so I'm jumping to the playground, which I think is should be everyone's favorite part. So there's a lot. I will try to flip through. So this is the playground, and I'll try to hit up some of the highlights that I don't think you have seen before. So coming right here, this is one of the main entrances to the playground, and it is a donor fence and gate. So it's kind of doing double duty. It's a kind of reads as the main entrance, the gate, but it's also a donor fence. So for different levels of donation, you can get different size butterflies. Really think it's going to be lovely. And right there, we also have some of the donor pavers. If any of you have donated a paver, this is where this goes, and then some in-ground metal lettering at that main entrance. Okay. Then coming further down, also worked a little more on our sensory arch here. So there's a number of different features, play features here, really aimed at children and adults with that might be attracted to or really enjoy different sensory experiences. This one is a polycarbonate resin rainbow arch. So they're semi-transparent, really hoping glows and kind of sparkles in the light. And that kind of leads into a different area of the playground. And then jumping over to the toadstools. First toadstools I've ever done in my architectural career. Pretty fun. So these are kind of little play structures that we were incorporating auditory play, so some different sounds of Santa Barbara inside them. Just gonna see some of the shop drawings of them. And they have little toadstools outside them and toadstools inside them and little benches, so really trying to make the most of these little areas. Then towards the center of the park, we have a picnic structure area with these leaf elements, and there's 3 leaf elements. It's just the shop drawing, the actual leaf. I can go back to the plan to see its layout, but this is kind of that family gathering area, as we imagine, if there's a game night at the park, this is where it would be. So trying to have a little fun rather than a simple trellis here. And then going back to the Treehouse, worked out some of the extra features here that kind of go from the inside to the outside. So there had been some questions previously about this element's the cocoon net climber. So it starts on the outside underneath and then comes up through. So from the walkway, you can, there's a ramp that goes the whole way up, but there's also a net, a slide, and then this cocoon climber. So this is, while being fully accessible, you can get into the treehouse like 4 different ways and, really give you a variety of ways to access it. So this is that cocoon climber that starts on the outside and kind of the exposed and then climbs up. So 155 sheets of, lots of things. So look forward to your questions and comments. There's plenty to go into and happy to jump in more detail as we need.
Let's shift over to public comment then, if we could.
All right, thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have 5 requests to speak, so I'll go ahead and start with Bibi Longstreet. If you can make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
My name is Bibi Longstreet, and I was a Parks. Hi, I'm Bibi Longstreet. I served on the Parks and Recreation Commission for 25 years, and I retired in January. So I have been through all of the public comment on this park and this renovation, and I fully support what you see before you today. We heard from not only Gwendolyn's wonderful, magical ideas, but from the soccer community and the youth baseball community. And one that touched me the most was a man who mentors young men from the east side over there in the training, the athletic training equipment. So this park will serve our entire community. And I think it's especially important right now as we see density coming to our city. It's coming whether we like it or not. And that means we need to take care of our open spaces, our parks, and our recreation facilities, all of them. A park that has not been renovated in 60 years is not useful to our community. So I look forward to you giving this its final approval. I want to say a big thank you to the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation that the partnership has moved this forward. And I think we are just blessed as a community to have this project before us. Thank you.
All right, up next, we have Nick Kuntz. If you can make your way up to the mic on the left side of the room.
Good afternoon, ABR members. I want to start by thanking you for your service to this community. My name's Nick Kuntz. I'm a lifelong city resident and obvious advocate for accessibility. For several years now, I have served the city of Santa Barbara as a member of the Access Advisory Committee, as well as the Building and Fire Safety Code Board of Appeals, right here in this room. I'm also director at the Tri-County Independent Living Resource Center. The Access Advisory Committee, or AAC, has been following this project very closely since its inception, and it has provided unanimous support and positive feedback throughout to the process. Earlier this year, the AAC began a new initiative to recognize individuals and organizations who seek to advance accessibility in our community. Our first nomination was to recognize Victoria Strong as an Advocate of the Year for her efforts in developing Gwendolyn's Playground. The AAC voted unanimously to support the nomination, and The recognition is scheduled to be presented at the October 17th City Council meeting. As a member of the city's Building and Fire Safety Code Board of Appeals, I am required to have practical understanding of federal ADA requirements. I'm also required to have practical knowledge of California Building Code requirements related to accessibility. In that capacity, I'm frequently critical of development projects that attempt to avoid the required accessibility improvements, as Mr. Van Mullen can attest. In contrast, this project before you truly goes above and beyond. Gwendolyn's playground is fantastic in every sense of the word. I cannot adequately articulate just how important this project is to me. While I wish this facility existed when I was a child, or even when my children were young, perhaps someday I may share it with my grandchildren. But what really moves me is the way this entire community has rallied around this effort. It has raised the bar and my hopes for improved accessibility throughout the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, we have Victoria Strong. If you can make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, how are you? I'm Victoria Strong. I'm the Executive Director of the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation. I'm also Gwendolyn's mom. When I contacted the city 7 years ago about bringing an accessible, inclusive playground to Santa Barbara, since that time, first, they were enthusiastic right from the front, which was the best way to start a relationship. In that 7 years, I have met with dozens of schools and their entire teams, with caregivers, with therapists and medical professionals, with hundreds of nonprofits, both in town and outside of town, working on a variety of issues. And I have met with thousands and thousands of residents. In showing the plans, there has been such enthusiasm. The people of this community want this project, and not only do they support it in their words and their enthusiasm, they are supporting it with their dollars. It is the citizens of this community that have helped raise $6 million to back it. I could not have done that without them. So I want you to know that this project is so well supported, and people cannot wait to get out there and play, and that comes from all ages, from grandparents to the tiny toddlers. I love that now, as I walk through the grocery store, children run up to me and say, "Is Gwendolyn's playground going to be built yet?" And that's a wonderful thing. So I just want to remind you that every single detail has been chosen with very much specificity based on a wide range of needs. And this park truly serves people who have not ever been served here before. So thank you so much.
All right, up next, we have Katrina Sprague. If you can make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Katrina Sprague, and I'm the Director of Development and Community Engagement at the Riviera Ridge School. I'm a board member at Calm and a proud member of the Gwendolyn's Playground Board. I grew up here in this incredible community in a large family, 4 sisters and a brother. My husband and I moved back to Santa Barbara when my oldest boy was 9 months. Ford is now 3 years old, and we also have a very smiley 8-month-old daughter, Charlotte. As someone who works at a school, I see the critical importance of play. It is one aspect of the environment I get to witness daily that brings me the most joy. At our school, 25% of the population is neurodiverse, and that is actually a low number compared to the general population. Our entire world is neurodiverse. I am neurodiverse. Just as our schools have embraced and adapted to different learning styles, our playgrounds should embrace and incorporate design elements for kids of all abilities as well. My sister has triplets, 2 boys and a girl. The 2 boys are on the autism spectrum, and they are the sweetest, brightest loves. We are so thrilled when they come to visit Santa Barbara. But do you know what they're most excited about? The zoo. The Santa Barbara Zoo is autism friendly. It is inclusive, and they can go and just be children. Play, experience, laugh, and feel comfortable. I always assumed, like most kids, like my kids, that they just really love the zoo. But I have come to understand that it is the thoughtful design and consideration for a diverse population that lends itself to being so appreciated. Not just by everyone, but by those who need these spaces the most. This, to me, is one of the many incredibly compelling reasons why Santa Barbara needs a space like Gwendolyn's Playground. An inclusive space where not only neurodiverse children, but children and family members of all abilities can play together. All children and their families deserve this at the basis level. To be able to provide this in our community is a gift. Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, we have Grace Fisher. If you could make your way up to the podium. Okay. At this time, I don't have any further speaker slips. And I don't see anyone else moving to speak, so we'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive 2 letters from Rod Latham and Nick Kuntz. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment and go to questions. Who would like to start? Anything down here, Mr. New?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Black?
I have a few questions. So, I know many of the exhibits that you showed here were in black and white, and I know there's a lot of color associated with the playground, and I was wondering, can we see any of that? Like, for instance, the treehouse, I don't know what the colors are going to be, or maybe that hasn't been determined yet, but
So, yes, let me.
I saw the
flip up.
toadstools, I saw color there.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
So this was our color material board. So this, for instance, was prior to the construction documents that added a little bit more of the greenery and leaf items, but these are kind of the general color materials for this set.
So there may be some variation on that, but that's generally the palette then?
Correct.
Okay, I understand.
Yep.
You talked about the playground surface is now going to be a sort of rubberized surface. What color was that going to be?
So that one. So the let me pull up Celsius in a second. I don't think I have a picture of it, but I can tell you. So we range from red, purple, light purple, tan, yellow, orange, bright green, turquoise, azure blue, and light blue. So it's very similar to this color palette here that you're seeing in the for the treehouse. So same palette.
So is it going to be in swirls and
Yes.
what have you?
So let me pull up a good sheet for you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Black, the the colors for the playground haven't changed, but what we did have to change to meet an ASTM for fitness equipment was the surfacing for the fitness area. So that had to be poured in place rubber to meet the fall zone requirements. So that was the change in the surfacing since you last saw the project.
Good, thanks. I probably asked this question at a previous meeting, but could you describe to me the fencing between the softball field and the playground itself? I'm concerned about long fly balls and what impact that's going to have.
Absolutely. So let me pull up that. So basically, we have a low wall, so 4-foot wall here. And then on top of that, we have that welded wire fence. So we have 20 feet of total coverage.
Oh,
Sorry.
And keep in mind that this is like the younger of the youth program for baseball and softball.
it'll be limited to them then? Okay. So 20 feet,
Correct.
okay. Let's see. You sort of mentioned in passing about, maybe it was a change, but paper bark trees along that walkway. Could you tell me what the size of those tree walls are? Because my experience with paper bark is they get to be a really large tree, and I'm just wondering whether or not they might be too big for those spaces, but I'm curious. And then your landscape architect, I'm sure, could address this as well, but,
I'm Marissa Peltier from RRM, and the size of those tree wells is about 8 by 11.
oh, it is that big. Okay.
Yeah,
No-
they're large.
No problem. I'm good, thank you. No more questions.
Okay. Vice Chair Six.
Thank you, Chair Moore. First is to David, this paper bark tree is an appropriate tree to meet our concerns about light spillage into the neighborhood.
I don't know what impact it's going to have necessarily at that location.
I
but-
think that was the first concern we had, and
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Black, the paper bark trees are only, whether there are 4 or 5 of them that separate the soccer field and the baseball diamond. So the trees that you're really looking for are the perimeter trees.
Oh, yes, okay.
Right.
That are
Wrong.
in between the park and Port Lamar Road.
yeah, I think in your previous review of this, your specific question about those trees against the residential area and whether they were spaced and specied well enough to screen.
Yeah, did that come up in the comments at the end of the
It
meeting?
came up in the comments, but it was a specific
Mr. Chair.
focused meeting and postponed that question until this time.
Yeah, I'm remembering that now vaguely, but
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Black, Commissioner Six. So that question came up quite a few meetings ago, and it was specific to an aerial photograph that we showed, and we had not shown the street trees at a mature size graphically. So I think that was, once we said, at 75% grown out, that the canopy would be much larger, that was, took care of the concern.
So as long as Mr. Black is reviewed and happy with
I'd have to go
the
back and look at it again,
species
but
and spacing.
how was your landscape architect looking at that? I'm trying to remember, it seemed as though there was some concern about maybe the density should be increased perhaps, maybe add a tree or two to increase the density along that. Was that addressed at all?
We did increase the density, and we believe that the size and spacing is definitely adequate.
When you say density, you've added trees?
We did add about 3 or 4 trees.
Okay, well, I think that's about what we would have expected.
Okay, thanks.
That's fine, thank you.
So it was actually my question.
Sorry.
What, the treehouse, what is the material and construction of these leaves? How are they, what are they made of, and how does it look?
Well, they're a stainless steel mesh, and they're commonly used for theming, so you see them often at Disneyland or
It's a mesh,
as a stainless steel woven mesh, a very fine.
so it's actually a stiff fabric that the leaves are cut
Yes,
out
it's
of,
like a
and the
fabric.
stems
Yes,
are
I haven't
also-
actually held one, but they're green and they're a woven mesh.
and they stick into a concrete.
Yeah, so it's a reinforced, fiberglass concrete shaped element, and then these are inserted in.
So they can look quite dense.
Yes, and I mean, they're all put on by hand, so, by artists, so they'll definitely make sure they're
And I
sculpted.
don't mean to belabor it, but it's one of my concerns. And the leaves are on stems, and the stems go directly into the concrete singularly? Or are they, the stems meet and have larger stems that eventually go into
Like
the
little
concrete?
branches?
Yeah. Don't know.
I actually don't know, we haven't seen the shop drawings for those details yet, but
So for the scientific art studio, this will be hopefully a sole sourced. It's not, they're doing the design, but also the fabrication.
Uh-huh.
This is it's almost sculptural, and it's.
I
in
just don't
its
want
setup.
them to look fake. Or, not fake, I know they're
Yeah.
fake, not clumsy.
Correct. We can certainly provide photos of similar installations they've done, but this will be.
Well, this is final, so,
Yeah.
okay.
They have used them before at a museum in San Francisco. They sculpted a very large baobab tree, and they use these leaves, so they've tested them and know that they've held up in the elements.
Okay. This is more of a comment than a question, but on your picnic trellis, it seems to me that 4 by 6 spanning 18 feet is, precarious for that to happen. And I realize that your primary beam cross and the curves are in one plane, but can you add at least one intermediate primary beam in mid-span of that 18 feet to help not only aesthetically but physically with the stability and weathering of that piece of wood?
Yes, if this were to be made a comment, would you be open to leaving us a little wiggle room in terms of saying we'd like to strengthen both visually and structurally that span? I think there's a couple ways we might want to look how to slice it.
Interior blocking or something,
Correct. Yeah.
aesthetically, of course. Yeah, okay,
Right.
well, we'll leave it with that. You don't have a sample of your synthetic turf, do you? There are some last project we saw was outstanding sample where it actually had brown threads in it that,
Give a little bit of the dead grass.
a little bit of the dead grass in it. Are you proposing the most
Mr.
current,
Chair, Commissioner Six.
yes?
So what we did is we went to City College to look at their new field that's been put in about 1.5 years ago. And it is holding up extremely well. It has a really nice look to it. I mean, keep in mind, it's synthetic turf, and the number one thing for us is how well it plays, how does the ball roll, how does it protect someone who falls down. So those are the different things that we really look at. But going to City College and looking at their synthetic turf, it is quite appealing.
Okay, I guess now that I think about it, the synthetic turf I was thinking about was used for other than athletic and may not be appropriate, so I withdraw that. I encourage you to go and propose what you are proposing. So those are my questions.
Mr. Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Moore. My question center around this magical tree, which now I'm really intrigued about how these leaves are going to be rendered in the tree itself. But I got a bit confused, Mr. Pierce, if you can clarify. You showed us a black and white image this time of the tree, I believe it's L3, image 152. If you can call that back. Yes, that one. I previously don't remember this elevational change being an issue. That's one. Which direction are we looking at the tree is 2. And 3, what happened to the ramp that would allow you to access to the upper floor? And 4, how do I access the upper floor now?
So the ramp is still there. This was a
It's not
image
in
with.
this picture, though.
Correct.
Okay.
This is specifically of the tree to give you a sense of the shape and the greenery of the tree. So
Is this view from the intersection of Port Lamar, looking across that axial triangular entryway?
Yes.
Okay, that answers that, yes.
Okay.
And so the ramp would appear much as it did in your illustration 96 with that swooping around.
Correct. So we were looking right down here. You still have that ramp to come up to access the upper level.
Up to the upper level.
The bottom one connects to the intersection at Port Lamar, that bottom one that you saw.
Very good. I understand that now. So my previous comment was how the ramp compromised the image of the tree. Did you care to respond to that in any way, or are we just stuck with that ramp?
So we studied a couple different directions and kind of landed on one. The first was, you may have been the one to suggest it, but trying to make the ramp actually look more organic. So we were looking at kind of banyan tree-esque. What we found when we did that was that it started looking really heavy. When you're looking at it, you saw the ramp. You didn't see the tree as much. And so we actually ended up skewing in a different direction. Or so just hand me, these are some precedent images that we were looking at earlier. Really trying to make it as light as possible, in that it's not in the same sense organic as the tree is organic, in that it has molded shapes. But
City
trying
TV,
to-
can we get an overhead shot of? Thank you.
So it provides, we're looking for more transparency, that you have a fairly large structure wrapping around this tree, but how to make that as light as possible. So we've gone to the single steel columns, a lighter transparent rail. So rather than kind of lean towards the, hey, let's make this vines and a tree, let's make this clean and simple so you actually can see the tree. So we think it's succeeded in that strategy, but that was our thinking when we were re-looking at how to detail out the ramp.
Thank you. Very good. Those are all my questions, Chair Moore.
Ms. Anderson?
These are real minor. I think in Zone 1 you mentioned you have a stucco wall. Are you putting a cap on that or just doing a stucco on top?
It was actually a concrete wall.
Oh.
In that area. It's a concrete seat wall to
Oh,
match the
not
rest of the seat
stucco.
walls. Yeah,
Got it,
the
okay.
stucco walls are primarily the ones around the playground.
Okay.
Whereas the rest of the seat walls in the park are just a colored, integral colored
Okay,
concrete.
I'm sorry I missed that.
Yeah.
And then the other question on the trellis, the cedar trellis in Zone 2, are you capping those 4x6s with metal or leaving the ends open?
Right now, they're left open, but
Okay.
that's something we could consider, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are my questions.
Okay. Just one question from me on your elevation of the gate into the playground. I forget. Yeah, that's the one. So the pedestrian gate itself, is that something that gets locked every night, or is there a function to that?
Chair Moore, we've kind of really studied the fencing, and to protect this asset, it's potentially a $6 million or more build-out, we felt that raising the fence to 5 feet and being able to lock the gates was probably the best to protect the asset.
Okay. Is there a reason that this is sort of a question / comment. It's that little gate itself is sort of underwhelming in the midst of all this, color and interest. Is there a reason that it's sort of not part of that language and just looks like, a standard fence?
It matches the rest of the playground gate, so other than that reason, not really.
Okay.
Trying not to busy it up too much. We had considered putting a butterfly there, but it started being a lot of butterflies.
Okay. All right. Any other follow-up? Yeah, Mr. Noonan?
I had a quick one about the ramp now. So what's the infill between the rails and the posts?
It is wood decking.
The vertical infill?
Oh, so that's steel and a kind of large wire screen.
Okay.
I have one quick question, though. It seems like at our last meeting, there was some discussion around the canopy of, getting back to the tree, the canopy of the tree, and I'm trying to remember whether we had suggested that some modifications be made, and my question is, were there? And my impression when I first saw your black and white elevation is that it seems a little flat top to me, as opposed to having something that in a natural tree would have sort of newer growth above and provide a little bit more of a rounded top rather than just, I don't know. It's just an impression I had when I saw your drawing. So I'm just wondering whether or not that's of any concern to anyone here.
So I can try to pull up the actual images. I'll say the main item that we tried to shift is rebalance it. The comment that, as we heard it, it was looking a little light on the leaves and that it was throwing it off a little balance. We wanted to provide a little more volume of the leaves up top. That's what we've attempted to do there.
Okay.
Add a bit more of that green higher up, so it's not, you have a fairly sizable tree element, the kind of the wood, to try to balance that out a little
Yes.
more.
Can we go to that elevation if you don't
yes,
mind?
Absolutely.
No, the elevation one, more of the, yeah, that. Yep. See what I mean when it seems sort of, there's a lot of trunk, a lot of treehouse, and just this little flat top leaf massing at the top. And if there was a way you could just kind of get it to grow up a little taller there. I don't know, just my thought, but it doesn't seem natural to me, having seen baobabs in the wild, but.
I think we're also all playing with angles, so
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, I would say this elevation maybe succeeds more in what you're asking for here.
Okay. Well, I know you don't want to cover up the cupola either, so I can understand that, but I don't know, it's just an observation on my part, not a game changer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? No? Okay, let's go to comments if we could. So they're here for final, so I think I just want to hear from everybody if they've responded adequately based on our comments, and if they've provided enough information for final approval at this time.
Mr. Chair, I'll go first. It's a dynamite project. It's wonderful. It's got everything and well thought out and so forth. I think it's ready for final. I wasn't here for the last review, but way back in August, I had an issue with the treehouse, and I still think there's a missed opportunity there. And I'm better prepared to describe it to you, I hope. It's a storybook aesthetic, and I think that gives a limited audience of kids, because kids grow into a storybook period, but they grow out of it too. And our 12-year-old boy is going to be excited about a storybook treehouse as opposed to something that's more artistic and more abstract. It still can look like a treehouse. I'm glad you brought this image, because if this was a storybook language for this ball here, whether it was a balloon with dots and colored dots and so forth, that would be a lot more limiting than this piece of art. This is a sculptural piece of art, and it could be playful in the imagination of a 3-year-old, a 12-year-old, and even old men like me would have an appeal to this sculpture. And that's what I think is the missed opportunity with that treehouse, is that if it was more abstract and more artistic, it wouldn't be limiting to one schoolhouse school book expression, it would appeal to a lot bigger audience and even to the general public outside of the park. So that's what I think was the missed opportunity. So thank you.
Mr. Noon?
Oh, I was just going to add, I'd be very quick. I think it's ready for final. I think they have appropriately responded to the direction that we've given them. I guess I would maybe deviate a little bit from the previous comment and think that the playground as a whole, I think, is appropriate for the age. Maybe younger kids would be playing in the treehouse. The older kids are going to be playing on the ball fields. So I don't think it needs any tweaking. I think it's ready for final as is. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in? Ms. Anderson?
I think all the changes they proposed are within keeping of the project and are successful. I do hear what Board Member 6 is saying, but I feel like we're at the final stage, and unfortunately, I don't think it's the appropriate time to make them do anything. So I would support final approval as is.
Okay. Mr. Whalen?
Sure, thank you, Chair Moore. I would think that Mr. Six's comments are still relevant and give you time to think about changes. Design is constantly developing, with the exception that you're not old. You can't be old.
I'm an
That
old kid.
You're a young old guy. I would like to commend the patience and the perseverance of the proponents. It takes a long, long time to come up with a project, much less to come up with a good project. And this one, too, I think has several degrees of magic to it. And Mr. Pearson, you and your team have earned our trust. You've responded admirably. Although, like I say, design is a process. You're going to continue with things. You have earned my trust. I do think it's ready for final approval today. I appreciate the fanciful qualities have and continue to develop in very pleasing ways, and I can't understand why it's taken you so long to get around to mushrooms, because you have some natural talent for it. Perhaps it would be a good printed object to make as an experiment. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Black, did you?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Certainly ready.
Yeah, I agree. I think I wouldn't want to say or do anything to disrupt the process. I think it's ready for final approval at this time. I do agree with Vice Chair Six that, and I'd made some comments earlier on in this process that I felt the treehouse, the direction it was going isn't, necessarily the best, but this is what the applicant brought forward, and the folks that were supporting it clearly support it. So that's where we are. And so I think my only comment would be that I do hope the design team takes one more stab at that little gate at the butterfly gate. I think it could be so much better easily, but I'll make a motion for final approval of the project as presented today.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion?
Further discussion, can we add a suggestion to look at the gate at the
Butterfly gate?
entry to the playground and, can we add a suggestion to look at the gate in question and also look at ways to visually support the 18-foot spans of the 4x6 trellis members?
So we can add that as a suggestion, and perhaps you'll be back for a review after final at some point with some changes, so, okay. Okay, anything else? Okay, let's take our vote.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Safran? Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's take, Mr. Russell, can we take a 2-minute break?
Yes, the board will reconvene at 4:13. Thank you.
Meeting, and we're moving on to item number 2, which is 401 Old Coast Highway. This is a proposal to add 3 one-bedroom residential units to an existing 3-unit residential development located on a 7,262 square foot flag lot. The project is proposed under the AUD program and state density bonus law. 2 new units would be restricted to low-income households, and 1 unit would be restricted to moderate-income households. The project includes concessions regarding open yard, bicycle parking requirements, as well as lower parking ratios. Project requires state density bonus application approval by the Community Development Director and design review by ABR. So they are here, it's a new item, they're here for a project design approval, and the project requires compliance with the project compatibility guidelines. It looks like we have some staff input before we get going.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. Kathy Kennedy, case planner on this project. Generally, you have a concept review for these projects. In this case, they're coming before you for PDA right off the bat. We've been working with the applicant team for quite a while to get a complete application and work through all the concessions that they're requesting. It's a state density bonus law project that was mentioned. So now that they're complete, we wanted to get them on for PDA as soon as possible. It's a modest, affordable housing project located and on a flag lot, basically out of public view. And the concessions that were mentioned, I wanted to go over a little bit more. They're asking for relief from the open yard requirements for the new units, and also relief from the bicycle requirements, so they're not providing any bicycle spaces. And they are taking advantage of the lower parking ratios. They have 6 spaces, so they will have 1 for each unit. But under the AUD ordinance, it would be 7 required. But for the state density bonus law, they only need 3. So essentially, they have more than they need at 6. Otherwise, they made all the other zoning ordinance requirements for the project. And I'm here if you have any other questions about the project and process.
Okay, thank you. Before we jump in, so we typically give the applicant 15 minutes to present. That gives us time to ask questions afterwards and go through all the public comment. So keep that in mind. And then if you could introduce yourselves and walk us through this, please.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Just hitting the push button, and then Mike will just turn green.
There you go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Hard act to follow with RRM and a beautiful $6 million park project. As a former park commissioner, it's always nice to see those kind of projects. My name is Frances Romero. I'm a supervising planner with TW Land Planning and Development. And today with me, I have the designer of the project, Everett Woody. He'll be here to talk about architecture. And I also have Wiley Uretz. He's a real estate attorney because up with all of the different housing things, as I'm sure some of you might. So I'd rather not answer those type of questions. So we have all the resources here to answer any question you might have today. Got a quick presentation. I assume everybody's looked at the plans. This is a rather modest project. It's an affordable project, infill. And as Kathleen said, it's on a flag lot. It's not visible from the public street. It's addressed at 401.5 Old Coast Road. Our proposed project adds 3 units above an existing unit. One of the new units will be restricted to low-income household, and the existing 3 units will continue to be subject to the affordability control covenant and assignments of rents. This is for low-income households under Section 8 Housing Voucher Program. And I believe that Kathleen already addressed the parking spaces. We also want to be certain that any findings or any direction we're given is also consistent with the Housing Accountability Act, Section 65589.5, parens D and parens 1 through 5. I don't know how many people went by and did a site visit. Anybody go by? All right, well, I wanted to do a little bit of a virtual tour here. And what I've got is dashed lines are around the 2-story properties. The yellow are the neighbors that have concerns, the Muñozes and Mr. Eustacio Guadagnini. The lime green is the project area. And we're right there at the corner of Salinas and Old Coast Highway. This is an aerial view, so you can get an idea of the bulk mass and scale of the buildings around this particular structure. The subject property was built in 1957, and it is a flag lot, as Kathleen mentioned earlier, and the image to the right is a kind of a frontal view, a little bit of an aerial view of the existing apartments. As I noted, here's the street view at the corner. Flag lot driveway is over there on the left-hand side of the driveway, the not as dark paved area, and that goes back to the property. Here are a couple close-ups of the units, and these are off of any apartment finder site that you can find. We didn't go out and take new photos. This is what's out there that anybody could see at any time. This is the existing backyard area, and you can see the other 2-story apartment that's kind of looming over the backyard. And this is just an interior shot. These are basic units. They're affordable Section 8. The project applicant, I'm sorry I failed to introduce, William Pritchett. He's also here today in the front row. And he also is here if there are any questions.
Site management, certainly, while it's not something that you guys can give us direction on, it's definitely something that we've thought about because of adding the density and having talked with both of the neighbors that are interested. So these are some of the things that Bill intends to do to make the site work better. And certainly with having one spot per unit, we felt it was important to make sure that these spots are assigned per unit, and that'll be included in the new leases going forward, along with a diagram, because we know not everybody understands stuff, and some people need pictures. There is a long-term resident on the site that will be keeping an eye on things for Bill. Again, it's a small project. There's only 3 units now. There will be 6, but we felt it was important to have a point person on the site for the neighbors to address any issues. And at this point, the construction materials will be staged on the parking spaces, and the tenants will not be parking in the project area during construction.
So to clarify, our role is to review the exterior, the aesthetics of the building. We're
Yes.
not so interested in their staging plan or anything like that, so.
That's why I'm just briefly touched on it.
Please,
It's a
yeah.
normal question that
Okay, well, let's move on.
you'll hear about it today at any rate. All right, project compatibility analysis. The project is consistent with the other 2-story structures near the location. We're in an area where there are no adjacent landmarks, historic resources, or public views that are impacted. The second-story addition is very similar in size, mass, bulk, height, and scale to the other apartments that are immediately adjacent. And the existing landscape will remain unchanged. Balconies will be provided on the second story for private outdoor space. And the project is, as I said, Everett Woody is here today. He's the project designer. And we look forward to any questions that you have.
Okay. This one? Thank you. We're really not touching our project is really confined to the existing footprint of the front cottage. So there is a 3-story or a 2-story, 3-unit project. Can you go to the elevations, please? Thank you. We tried to keep the height as minimal as we could. We kept the roof to about a 3 and 12, 3.5, 12, somewhere in there. We're only using an 8-foot plate to keep the height down. We try not to disrupt the original architectural character of the existing building. We're adding stairs, obviously, for egress to the 3rd floor. Probably the bigger challenge to the project is how, well, let me just go to sheet A5. The part of the elevations that are really changing is we're omitting the siding on the ground floor and replacing it with wood. But probably the more challenging part about the project is really how we are going to transfer the loads of the new structure to the existing footings. And that's really where the challenge of the project comes in. So although we will be putting a new perimeter footing in, all the footings for the new glue laminated beams that you see in S1.2 will be transferred to pad footings on the north side and the south side of the project. And that's about it. There's not too much to it. So I don't really have any more to add, so you guys can
Okay.
take it away.
All right. I would suggest that you walk us through the elevations a little bit more and
Sure.
give us more information on the
Sure.
proposed materials. You mentioned plate heights and overall height, but just a little bit more about the windows, the doors, what's the material of those, all of that.
Okay.
Exterior lighting.
Yes, the windows, we're going to be replacing all of them, and I wish the energy code was a little bit different today, but we're using all vinyl windows instead of the steel windows that came out of the original building. Secondly, we're on the second floor, we are using exposed heavy timber rafters, and because this will have to be a 1-hour building, we'll be using 8x8 posts and so forth. But all of the wood, along with the T&G on the eaves, will be exposed. We have some nice knee braces that we're going to add that we did on the project about 10 years ago. On some of the entries, we added knee braces and so forth to cover the entries to the other units. So we took that knee brace and incorporated it into the new design. The handrail will be all wood. The newel post will be out of wood. The deck itself will be like a rain-through. It won't be it won't be waterproofed. It'll be nice, you know, wood decking. And the colors, we left that up for grabs. We're not really sure if we're going to go back with what the building originally was, which was Navajo white, and then some kind of, it looked like an Oxford brown is what we did before. And in terms of the massing of the second floor, it's very compatible with the neighboring properties. It's not as if it's overwhelming in height in any way. I think it's very appropriate for the neighborhood.
Okay, if that concludes your presentation, we can move on to public comment.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have 4 requests to speak, so I'll go ahead and start with Estochio Guadagnini. If you could make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
First of all, I want to say
And,
something.
hold on,
You want me to go up there?
yeah, we need you to speak into the microphone. And before we jump into public comment, if everyone could just hear me out. So the Architectural Board of Review is responsible for reviewing the aesthetics and the mass, bulk, and scale of the proposal. We don't have any input or say in the parking, the access to the unit, the number of parking spaces, or anything like that, or for that matter, the number of units proposed. That's something that's set forth in zoning code and state law. So what is most helpful for us as a board is when we hear public comment is how can we help you as a neighbor or a resident nearby ask the right questions and provide good direction to the applicant based on your concerns about the aesthetics of what they're proposing. Okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Now, first of all, I don't have all the rules of how you call each person by certain, you know, like Mr. Willen, or et cetera. I'm not that well educated, but I'm not dumb either. This project used to be our property. This not the project, but the land there was there. We built Munoz's Auto Repair right now years ago. We worked on Saturdays after work, on Sundays. We worked like crazy. The problem is now, I don't have any problem with Mr. Pritchett. He lived up on our block up on Cedar Lane. I haven't seen him for quite a while now up there, but anyway, the problem is this. It's the dentistry, is it? How many people in there? The problem also is the people that are in there. They're not bad people, but the swearing, the knocking down the fence, the parking, it's really too small of a lot for that. You know, you don't have any place for kids to play. They usually play with on the backside, bouncing off his building. They knocked down our fence. I had to replace it. I didn't go call Mr. Pritchett, but we've called the police. Not me, my son who lives there. Yeah, there was a girl that who's renting upstairs. She says the foul language that comes out of there in the morning or at night. Cars drive up there with the boom box or whatever you want. Well, you can't be calling the police or the section, whatever, Section 8 people all the time. It's just. The size, I think it's okay like it is now, but to go double it, I think it's totally wrong. And I just don't know if we can do anything about it because it looks like Sacramento sets the rules and all. So I don't even know why we're here because, you know, what is the point? 7,000, I have over 10,000 feet. I live at I had property at 407 or 405, and I could only have one more unit when I built it. You know? So now, it's just the density. I don't want to turn into a ghetto, that area there. The kids,
That is your
am I out of
2
time?
minutes, unfortunately, yes.
Okay, that's it.
But thank you
I'm
for your
against
comments.
it, period, okay? Nothing against them, but I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got to go over there and take a look at it.
Okay, up next, we have Angie Munoz. If you can make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you for allowing me to take this moment to speak to all of you. I am an owner, my husband and I own the property right in front of this flag-shaped property. And I'm here to speak about two things. I know that it's not really for your consideration, but I would like to just go on record for two, actually, I'm going to go on record for 3 different items. First of all, I need to go on record to make sure that the construction, trucks, supplies, equipment are not on our property at all. It's a very small area of parking that they intend to use for their construction supplies, for their everything that's needed, and I want to make sure they don't impede our parking for our property. We need this for our parking, the big building that's in front. Secondly, I need to address the parking situation. There is a circulation of parking problem in this lot, to the point where Mr. Pritchett's tenants have caused severe damage to our cars, to our building. If you notice on one of the slides she showed, the parking spaces for his tenants are straight. I'm requesting that 2 things be done, that perhaps they be put at a slant so that these people do not back directly into our parking spaces because they don't know how, because they hit our cars and our building. And also, I'm wondering if a traffic report study was ever done so that someone could review this outside of the group that's here presenting the project for us. Thirdly, I need to speak about the management for this property. I understand that he's going to have an on-site management person there, but it's been a big problem. Mr. Sahio mentioned about it briefly, but the tenants that he brings in, that Mr. Pritchett brings in, are unruly. They bring in guests who are not allowed to stay there, who create a lot of the problems, and so to help with the problems, we have put up cameras, lighting, and all those are the type of things that are needed to make the area safer just for us who just run a business. I can't imagine what it'd be for the people who live there at night, how they feel. But he mentioned how he's heard his tenants speak about that situation.
That is your 2 minutes. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, we have David Munoz. If you could make your way to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, thank you, Board. Again, the big concern I have is to make sure on traffic flow, if there's a way to get an engineer in there to do a traffic study report on that area. The pictures make it look big, okay? I know they stated it's a small project. It's a small property, very small. And as you, I'm sure, have gone and looked at it, it's just not that much running around there. I have a big concern too. Okay, you know, I came from a huge, you know, family, dirt poor, and so we played wherever we could and did whatever we could, you know, and I feel for the kids that live back there. They have nowhere to play at all. They're always playing on our parking lot, always hitting the ball against the fence, through the wall, everything else. You got to go out there and chase them, and this is like over and over and over that it continues to be. We do have an understanding with Mr. Pritchett on far as parking, where, yes, he can use our parking lot in the evening that we had to go through 10 years ago in order to make this happen. But daytime parking, they don't have anywhere to really park or play. I know with this new way of getting to it, the bonus program, that allows them to get maybe through some other hoops, but it's hoops that I feel need to be still addressed as far as the area for these kids to play. Like I said, I understand how it is to have nowhere to play, and you really need to think about these kids that are going to living there. So I think that's the number one importance. But yeah, that's about all I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, we have Lorena Medrano. If you can make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name's Lorena, and I have lived there for 11 years. And I just want to say I have nothing to say bad about, the proposal for Mr. Pritchett. As the landlord, all we have to do is call him, and he'll approach our situation, as needed. He'll take care of the property as soon as we call him, any kind of problems as soon as we call him. I just wanted to say, as a tenant, I have nothing bad to say, for this proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I haven't received any further speaker slips. And I don't see anyone else moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand. I do have one hand raised for Liz Fiala, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the ability to speak, and you can unmute yourself. You'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, I just want to thank the committee, first of all. I'll try to make this brief. My name is Liz Fiala, and I am the tenant of Mr. Guadagnini. One thing I wanted to point out actually was in the initial slides that you showed when you were outlining the neighbors and the properties that have raised issues. One building that was outlined in green, which should be outlined as a neighbor of concern, would be the one that I live in. And that is the 2-story building that is directly adjacent to the property. I did send an email about an hour, maybe 2 hours ago to the board, kind of outlining my concerns. I want to just reiterate everything that Mr. and Mrs. Munoz have said, as well as everything that Mr. Guadagnini has said. I'll point out that these new units are very, very close to my bedroom and to my bathroom. And from wherever I am in my apartment, in any room, I can hear the current tenants, having personal conversations with each other. I can hear them disciplining their dog. I can hear when their guests come in and out of the property. I can hear their kids playing outside. It goes on, and that's not much of an issue, but I think that it really, really would be if you were to add 3 more properties there. And I'm not somebody who's normally bothered by noise, but it's pretty bad as it is already. Another issue is privacy. As I said, this building is quite close to the one where I live. If you were to add a second floor, these would be very, very close to my bedroom and my bathroom. I already use blackout curtains, but I'm concerned about what the additional lights would need. I'm assuming if you're building a second story, there's going to be more lights at top. There's going to be more lights for people coming in. Also, the noise from the construction. There's already, when there's construction happening on the street outside, I can hear it in the morning. So if it's happening right next to the door, I'd be very, very concerned about that. Parking issues. There is no street parking in the area. I know that on paper there is, but if you ever to drive around this neighborhood anytime during the day or night, finding a place to park on the street is very, very difficult.
Okay,
So
sorry, that is 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
At this time, I don't have any other hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, we can close public comment, and let's go to questions. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I just have a question for staff to clarify the bicycle requirement concession. Is that because they're required to provide covered parking for bicycles?
They're required to provide bicycle parking.
I'm sorry, could you please unmute the meeting?
Oh. I don't know. That wasn't me. Okay.
You should go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, my question was, are they required to provide covered bicycle parking versus just bicycle parking? Is there a difference? 'Cause
I believe it's both, but they've decided to not provide
Provide
any parking, yes.
Okay. So to the applicant, can we go to the site plan, please? And can you show us what open space you are providing?
We're not. Board Member Anderson, we're not providing any open space that is required by ordinance. So the open space that is there is all that we're providing.
Sure. Can you walk me through where that is on the site plan?
Sure.
Pardon my interruption. City TV, would you be able to unmute the Zoom link? That'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. So, we're good?
Yeah, just continue on, please.
City TV's problem. This area of the property is the largest open space that we're providing, at least a private open space. We did have one here, but when we installed the stairs, it encroached on that open space, and that's why we were asking for relief from the bonus density law for that.
Okay.
Is your mic turned on as well? The applicant's mic is off.
Okay, and then you mentioned your siding is wood siding painted?
No, we're removing the existing wood siding and replacing it with plaster.
Okay, did not hear that. Okay, and then can we go to the elevations, please? I think one more. Yeah, that's fine. So on the south elevation, did you consider extending the columns to the ground on the first floor?
We did, and that would encroach on our parking spots.
Okay. And then if you could go to back to the site plan, sorry, and show us the proposed windows and their proximity to the neighbors. The site plan would probably be.
Back, hold on, wait, go back one, come forward. Thank you. So if you see the proposed east elevation, those three windows on the third floor and then the two windows on the ground floor, those are the windows that are in close proximity.
Second floor.
Yeah, including the ground floor. So 5 windows in
And
total.
then can you go to the site plan and show us where that neighbor's property is?
So the neighbor that called is right there.
Can you zoom in on that so we can see?
Okay, now they're on.
So hit the plus button that's up there next to the hand.
Or control shift and scroll. Everybody has a way of doing it.
If you hold control and scroll.
And can you move the image down so we can see the,
So this is the neighboring apartment building, and this is where the second floor would be here, in this area where the little hand is.
There's a tree.
There is.
Will that tree remain?
Yes, well, we hope so. Yep. So you can see that the windows would be along this building line here, and you can see we got quite a distance, at least 20 feet from the proposed second floor to the apartment building. So the ones that the neighbors are probably more concerned about are the windows on this ground floor unit. This is where all the bedrooms are located for Unit 2. And that'll be closer proximity. I think it's within 15 feet.
Okay, those are my questions.
okay, Mr. Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Moore. Ms. Kennedy, could the phrase, "the project includes concessions regarding open yard and bicycle," are these exemptions?
That's another term you can use. Under the state density bonus law,
Just-
we use concession or incentives to provide affordable housing.
So
So there are exceptions or exemptions from.
they're exemptions,
Yes.
thank you. And Mr. Woody, with your permission, I'm going to torture you a bit about the drawing conventions. It's, I think I understand the project, but just to clarify, if you could go to, let's see, it's your image 6, sheet A5, Yes. So when I look at the north elevation and the proposed north elevation, a section of the existing building magically disappears. Now, I understand you're trying to be clear about it, but is the new building done projected orthographically and the existing building, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I was trying to make it simple.
You're trying to trick
No, I
us.
wasn't trying to trick
Well,
you. I was trying to
it's
make
not easy to understand it unless you portray it correctly. I would have removed the existing building, but you understand my point.
Yes.
And if you could go to, let's see, it'd be your sheet A4, it's your images, no, image 5. That's 7. If you go back to, that's 4.
One more. Up.
One more.
Got it.
One more. Let's see. 2 and 4. Yes. It appears that the plate height on the existing building is going to be above the proposed building. It doesn't, it sort of shows up there in west elevation 2, where the existing building on the left projects up higher. It is,
Well, you're telling me that there's a drafting error between the west and the east elevation on the existing?
I'm sorry, I've misinformed you about that. I'm trying to understand the relationship between the existing building and the new and proposed one. And it appears that the existing building has a higher plate height, like 9, 10 feet. No.
No.
It projects, as I can see in number 2 here, projects up above the eave of the existing building, which makes me ask, can you give a height there of, is that 10 feet 6? So, no, that's the proposed, the existing. There it is, 10.62 top of building. So I just want to be clear that the existing building has a higher plate height than the proposed and new building.
Let's go back to the site plan real quick. Sheet 2.1. Yeah. So what you were looking at was Unit 2 in the back
Yes,
of Unit 1.
yes.
And that is correct. That parapet is that height.
Okay, so I just wanted to pin down that relationship in my mind. Moving on then, your image number 9, sheet A6, this is an existing photo. 7, 8, 9. One more. Oh, back one.
There you go.
And let's see, it's on sheet A6. Let's see, which one was I looking at? South elevation photo, middle right. If you could zoom in on that. There appears to be a wing wall out front. See, with the red and white sign on it? I don't see that anywhere on the plan. Is that going to be removed? Is it existing? Is it just, does it turn back and against the building?
I don't even remember seeing that, even when I did this project originally 10 years ago. Is that right? Yeah, okay.
It's a what?
Yeah, it's, the entire porch element all the way back to the existing structure will be removed.
So right now it encloses what would be a front porch, and that's going to be removed. Very good.
Yes.
You might,
My apologies for that.
let's see. Oh, and then, let's see, you were,
If I may, that enclosure doesn't enclose anything essential like a hot water tank or
No.
anything, so it can be removed.
No.
Thank you, sorry.
no, it's just kind of a privacy for that unit. I see the steps up on the left and a railing along the porch to give it some sense of privacy from the parking lot. And then if you could go back to one of the site plans, I'm not sure which one I want to talk about, but there's an area, no, not that one, that one. If you could zoom in on the area between existing Unit 2 and existing Unit 3.
I'm on the wrong page again.
There it is. You can hold it right there. That looks like a little fountain in there. What is that going on between existing Unit 3 and 2 in that little gated yard?
That was a landscape strip that we put in, if you're talking about this area here.
Yeah, that.
That was a landscape strip.
Okay, to me, that answers that question. I think that's all of my questions.
I
Thank
think
you.
originally we looked at it as a bioswale.
A bioswale.
That was about 13 years ago, so my
Okay.
memory's a little.
Yeah, there must be quite an interesting building permit history on this project. But thank you, Chair Moore. Those are all my questions.
Vice Chair Six, questions?
Yeah, what is the extent of the facelift? Are you going to paint the rest of the existing buildings and upgrade the windows throughout?
No, only on the front unit. Will be the only one that we're changing.
Okay. I guess we went through the adjacent, there's the trash program, excuse me, okay. The reason that you're seeking exceptions for the amount of bikes required is because they simply don't have space, or why can't you include bikes? I think bikes are, especially electric bikes, are going to become essential for transportation with reduced parkings. Is there any way to get bike storage on this site?
Great question. The bicycle parking was a huge topic of discussion, and basically what it boiled down to was the amount of bike spaces that we had to provide, and then the types of bike spaces that we had to provide was a significant cost increase of about between $12,000 and $15,000. So we're trying to keep the cost down as much as we can so we can actually create an affordable project.
So so the limitations are because of cost rather than lack of area to provide?
I think that since we already have waivers for, and I think we have one waiver left, we have enough to where we could put the bicycle parking in the side yard setback. Not a problem. So we could seek relief for that.
Does the staff want to jump in on this or no?
Well, when we did talk about this, they were proposed in the setback, so that was one thing that we weren't supportive of at the time.
Okay.
So-
And so this is great that we're on this page. At the top of the sheet, as we go in the column of cars, there is 12 feet between, can you zoom in on that upper portion? Yeah, now go up a little. Yeah, the 12.5 easement, you're unable to develop or provide more play area or open yard area in that?
Well, that was a cross agreement between the owner and the neighbor. We're not going to get relief from that. However, if we want to move to the left of that, where there's landscape, there's an opportunity to put the bike parking up near
Well,
the fence.
I'm just looking for open area, whether it's used for bikes or play or living, whatever.
It is my understanding, after reviewing the easement, is that we can't do anything within that easement except park cars.
Okay. Um, in the existing photos, there's a lot of vines and railings and so forth between the parking and the entry to the downstairs unit. Is there any way to reintroduce some kind of screening so the headlights of cars number 4 or 5 or 4, 5, or 3 are not directly and nakedly looking into the unit's entry and primary windows?
There may be an opportunity because if you look at parking spaces 1 and 2, those are actually adjacent to a bedroom.
I'm talking about 4 and 5 and the entry and living windows in Unit 1. Can we go to first floor?
This is first floor.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't have, okay.
Not a lot of opportunity. I mean, you know, we could do some kind of a low privacy fence maybe across there. But we don't want it to get too high because then that's going to omit some light from the units. I don't think that's a good plan.
Is that landing and entry to Unit 1 raised?
Yes.
And where do you step up to it?
You step up from the walkway.
Oh.
Okay, and then you've got 2 steps up.
But you don't have any guardrail or fencing around it?
It's
So
only
it's just a platform?
It's only 13 inches off of grade.
Just a platform then? Okay, thanks.
We will be looking at having tenants back in for the parking to help alleviate some of the problems they have with the backing into the Munoz easement, the Munoz property. People don't seem to be able to do that very well.
I guess that, I know that parking is not an issue, but not our purview, but has staff reviewed the turnaround spaces and so forth on this, or is it a
These are existing.
non-conforming?
They're existing, and they also use the adjacent property to maneuver.
So they're non-conforming existing. Thank you.
Mr. Black, any questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Noon, any questions?
Yeah, quickly, can you go to one of the photos of the existing? I just wanted to get an idea of, we'll talk windows. I couldn't tell from the photos if the windows are just, the frames are just flush with the finish, or are they recessed at all?
They're flush.
Okay.
The old steel windows are wonderful. I love the narrow sight lines. They work well. They're just not going to work with today's energy standards, unfortunately.
And if you could pan around to some of the other photos, I thought maybe there was one that maybe had a different condition. We couldn't tell. I think it was maybe a front window.
You can click and drag on the plans with that hand.
How much easier, thank you.
Yeah, the south elevation that you have. You can zoom into that one maybe. Okay. And that, I assume then that is your reason for, I noticed the detail of the new windows, they're flush with the finish.
Yes.
Just to match, yeah, okay.
It'd be nice if we had thicker walls, you know, maybe we could pull those back and provide some definition, some shadow lines around the windows. Unfortunately, we just don't have that.
That's it for questions. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Suffren? No questions. All right. I had some questions about privacy, but I think those were addressed earlier. So let's jump to comments. Who would like to start? They're here for project design approval.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up question. So there's no a landscape proposed, correct? What we see is what we, in the photos, there's the landscape that we have.
Yes. The only landscape change really is the area under the stairs.
Okay, and do we have this group of photos, do we have is that the tree on the east elevation? That is upper left-hand, no, very top left. Top left. So that's the tree.
I remember when that was a 2-gallon tree.
And then is there a fence between property lines?
Yes.
Okay.
6-foot fence.
6-foot fence? All right, thanks.
6-foot wood fence.
Okay.
And then, is there, I'm assuming there's new exterior lighting as well?
Yes.
With the upstairs addition, do you have an image of what that might look like, or?
No, but I was thinking kind of gooseneck, try to stay with more of the kind of cottage feel, you know, with a kind of domed light, you know, down-facing lighting.
Okay.
But we'll show up with that when we get to final.
Okay. All right, well, let's go to comments.
Another follow-up question here on the question of the tree. When I look at these 3 photographs, the tree appears on the left one, but not in the 2 on the right. So is there a tree or isn't there? I would guess that it's gone.
No, I think that tree's still there. Well, it was there when I took the photographs.
Oh, well, that's a good sign, but it's not there when the other 2 photographs. No, scroll down. No, I'm sorry.
Scroll up.
Those are the ones. See, the tree should show up in those 2 photographs because it shows up there. You can even see the window.
It's taken in a different perspective.
Let's take the photo.
So one is close up and the other one's pulled back.
So is the photo taken in front of the tree?
So we're under the tree?
We're under the tree? I'm sorry, I don't understand
In
the
your
question.
photograph, you say we're pulled back.
Oh, so I remember when I was taking the photograph, I was trying to capture the rear unit, but I was not able to catch the front cottage on the east elevation to the left. So I moved the camera, pulled back to try to get as much building as I could without going into the neighboring property.
Okay, I'll let that go. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay, let's go to comments. Who would like to start? Anybody? Oh, Ms. Anderson?
This is a difficult project just based on all the constraints on the site. It feels like we basically have to allow some of these things just because it's a state density bonus project. So I guess my comments would be, I still think it would be nice to provide some sort of bicycle parking, even if it's not up to the standards that are required, and still have that concession. I think that's important. I think you'll need to come back with an actual material board and a lighting cut sheet. Usually we have those at project design approval for at least a direction. I don't know, architecturally it's very simple. So I'll leave it there. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whalen?
Sure, I'd reiterate that look if I could redo it. But I would reiterate Member Anderson's comment on the bicycles, and this specifically to the owner, Mr. Pritchard. If you don't have any place to put the bikes, they're just going to destroy the door jambs, the stairwells, the walls. So I think it really behooves you to include some bicycle parking in some miraculous way. Perhaps it can be tucked in under the staircase while respecting setbacks, but it just does seem like this project, with a lack of parking and an impetus towards using bikes, it should be a little more bike-friendly. As I understand it, the driveway and the drive aisle are shared. Very curious thing, but cars don't share things very well, but that's a comment aside. One of our, aside from the architects, which Member Anderson tried valiantly to describe, it's a part of the neighborhood. I don't think it adds or subtracts anything, but the joy of doing real architecture is to have something come out with more than just the parts you put into it. I would encourage you to, at that point, part of our charge is livability. And so I think landscape and open space are keys to making this project livable. You might even consider putting some skylights in on the second floor over the bathroom in the central unit, something to bring more daylight and natural light into the quality of the spaces here. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay, Vice Chair Six?
Yeah, Chair Moore. Can we go to the elevation sheets? One more. Yeah, scroll up just a little bit for the lower elevation. Nope. There we go. On the proposed north elevation, I would realize that the middle unit has to have those, the shape of those windows for emergency escape, but the two sides bedrooms could have high windows that would avoid the view of the roof, make bed space underneath the windows and so forth. So I think that could look at the shape of those windows for better light and livability in those two outside bedrooms. I concur with getting, even if substandard, some bicycle parking. I think that you should bring some kind of landscape or lattice screening to the entry experience of Unit 1. And I think I think I'm pretty satisfied with the adjacency to the affected neighbor, but I think we would like to have more information and better photos of the tree and how that works, so we feel comfortable with that assumption. And I think that, I think the density or the mass spoken scale, given the parameters and the nature of the neighborhood, is appropriate.
Okay. Mr. Black?
I'd agree with those comments. I have nothing to add.
All right, Mr. Noon?
Similar comments. I would also add that, anywhere you can add to the architecture, do so, since we're so limited on other parameters that, as it's been discussed, it's a very challenging project. The windows, for instance, if that is something that can be improved upon. Back to the privacy issue, typically we would see an exhibit of how windows will line up to adjacent properties. I agree with Board Member 6. We should understand if the tree does exist or doesn't. If that's going to help in that aspect. It doesn't, in plan, it doesn't look as they're not directly in line with one another, so it didn't look necessarily as bad as it could, but I think an exhibit to illustrate that would be beneficial. I think that was it for now.
Okay. Mr. Saffron?
Nothing to add.
Okay. My own comments are that there's a lot going on this little site, but I think in general, the mass bulk and scale is acceptable. The addition of the housing units is great. I do like how the applicant has provided that, trying to mimic with the existing roof line and how the roof line kicks out over the walkway upstairs. I think that's nicely done. I do wish there was a little bit more attention paid to the existing ground floor experience. I understand this is a budget-driven project, but if there's some means of translating some of that downstairs, that would be ideal. So those are my comments. As a point of discussion, it's hard to tell. It sounded like the board was a little divided on whether the project is ready for PDA or not. So I'd be interested to hear everybody's perspective on that. Whomever, yeah, go ahead.
I think that since there's a lot of elements of this project that don't fall under our purview, it seems to me like it checks the boxes for project completeness.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I don't think there are any of the issues that we've brought up that are terminal to the major thrust of the project.
Okay. Any other thoughts down there?
No, I think it seems, project compatibility wise, mass bulk and scale, it's very simple, fits in with the neighborhood. You can't really reduce it without taking away units. So in that aspect, I think it's ready. I think we need more information like we've already discussed, but, so as far as like project compatibility analysis, I think it fits with the indications they've given us.
Okay. Any dissenting viewpoints? No? No? Okay. Well, I'll take a stab at the motion. So I'll make a motion for project design approval as presented with the comments that the board appreciates the input from the neighbors and the public comment. Unfortunately, most of those concerns are out of our hands, and we are here to review the exterior appearance of the proposal. I want to commend the designer on fitting this number of units onto this parcel and working with the planning department to get to this point. I would encourage the designer to continue to look for opportunities to upgrade the appearance of the remainder of the building and to upgrade the appearance of the existing landscape, hardscape, fencing, etc. And then thirdly, to continue to look for locations for bike parking, even as, in unofficial terms, whether it be bike posts that, you can provide them, I believe, but without, conforming strictly to what the planning department would like to see. And then, because I think the bikes are going to come whether you plan for them or not. At final review, please provide materials board, lighting cut sheets and samples with colors and locations on a site plan so we can verify that those are acceptable. Anything else? Or
And the
do I have a
project compatibility findings, please.
Okay. So I can make the project compatibility findings because the project, number one, is consistent with the design guidelines as this proposal fits within the character of the neighborhood. And that goes with number two as well. The project essentially duplicates what the architectural qualities are there currently. Number three, it is an appropriate mass, size, bulk, height, and scale because there are other two-story buildings in the neighborhood. Number four, we're not aware of any adjacent landmarks or historic resources. Number five, there does not impact any public views of the oceans and mountains. And number six, although the project is low on open space and landscaping yard, but it does not reduce the overall amount of open space and landscaping as part of this proposal. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Staff has some brief comments as well. Thoughts on returning to consent, and then also since this is a housing project, we are kind of need to adhere to some timelines. So if we can continue to a date certain of October 30th, or a 4-week continuance, that would be appreciated.
Well, to the applicant, what's your schedule for completing the detailing and drawings and specifications?
And just to help, and this might help the applicant as well, so we need to continue to a date certain just to keep the ball rolling. It would be scheduled for October 30th, but if for some reason the applicant team is not ready to return, we would just need to let the public know that this item has been postponed to another date certain. So it's just kind of bumping that date certain down the road.
One question about that, is that for final review, that it would be October 30th?
Correct. Well, depending on the motion today.
Understood.
Probably MEP 6 months, 4 to 6 months. Before you have a complete set ready to go.
Right.
Sorry.
We just need. And we don't need a full CD set for that, but if there is any condensing units or anything like that proposed, we would need to locate those on the site plan and see appropriate screening, et cetera. So
I thought full structural was required for final, is that not accurate?
no, just,
Okay.
no.
With that said, okay. With that said, I think that we could probably be ready to come back in about 30 days.
So that'd be October 30th. Today's the 2nd.
Didn't I say 30 days?
Yeah.
So,
We're all saying the same thing.
yeah.
28.
You have 28 days.
You turn 60, things happen.
But drawings need to be submitted prior to that date. So
Right, so about a week and a half prior to that date.
Got
So
2.5
we're, I think we'll need to leave that date there anyways. And
not
if for
ready,
some
you can
reason,
postpone it.
we can postpone it. It's
Okay.
not that big of a deal.
So what you're saying is you want to agenda that for 2.5 weeks now, and if I want to postpone because I'm not
Just let
ready?
us know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, so we're going to continue to a date certain of October 30th. Is that correct? Okay. Okay.
How do you feel about consent versus full board?
I don't know. I'm hoping that they come back with more information on the tree and
Yeah,
some of
okay.
that. So I think full board would appreciate seeing that. So to full board. Any other discussion?
Yes, to your motion, Chair Moore.
Yes.
If it didn't include a landscape plan, I would propose that.
It didn't,
It didn't.
mainly because they
There weren't going to be any changes.
they
to
didn't
landscape.
change, weren't proposing to change it.
All right.
So,
Otherwise, I would have asked for that.
And then in regards to your mention of improving the quality of architecture, This is aside from the motion. It occurs to me from looking at your fine elevation here, it's very close to Monterey style. So those more qualities that you could bring out of that building. The classic is the Larkin Building in Monterey, where the style gets its name. You might have to do deeper set windows or a larger trimmer. I'm getting off point, but thank
Okay.
you, Chair.
All right, if that's all the discussion, let's take our vote, please.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Sofrin?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Staff would just like to announce that there is a 10-day appeal period as well following project design approval. Instructions are on screen.
Okay, and with that, we can close our agenda for today. Thank you very much.